Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, thank you very much for speaking to DW. Now, you've just come from a press conference with Annalena Baerbock, your German counterpart, your first meeting here in Berlin, talking about the devastating floods that have hit just recently in Pakistan. Biblical is the word that you've used. Annalena Baerbock saying that Pakistan can count on German solidarity, offering support now a total of 60 million euros. Are you satisfied with that, 60 million euros?
I think, first of all, I'm incredibly grateful to the Foreign Minister for inviting us here, for her hospitality, and we're incredibly grateful to the people of Germany and the government of Germany for their support that they've been showing for us in this difficult time. As I mentioned in my press conference, absolutely biblical proportions for our flooding. 33 million people, which is a third of the landmass of my country, but 33 million people is 1 in 7 people of Pakistan devastated by these floods. 16 million of them are children, 600,000 pregnant women waiting to give birth. So we're very grateful for the support of not only Germany, but the international community by and large, particularly during this phase where we're in our rescue and relief phase, and we've launched a UN flash appeal. Going forward, we want to work with our partners, including our friends in Germany, on figuring out ways to finance the reconstruction and rehabilitation as a result of the devastation caused by the floods. That we would like to do in a greener, more climate resilient manner, and we're hoping to work with Germany, with France, with the US, with other countries to be able to do so.
But I just wanted to drill down on what you feel is the appropriate kind of scale of support, because there are a lot of crises going on at the moment, but I don't think there's any crisis happening in any country apart from the war in Ukraine which compares to what's happened in Pakistan. And just to come back to this figure of 60 million euros, Germany has recently announced that it wants to spend 200 billion euros on trying to keep energy prices low. That's more than 3,000 times as much. So I just want to understand, coming from a developing country, coming to Europe, to a rich country, asking for support, are you struck by this huge discrepancy in the resources?
So I first of all want to explain that there are phases to the sort of our asks for support. What we'll be doing in the next round, which will be a far more expensive proposition, is what I was talking about as far as reconstruction and rehabilitation is concerned. And for that, we would require the support of our partners, but we understand that they're difficult times. Difficult economic times for everyone. We've just faced a once-in-a-100-year global pandemic that has affected the economies of countries everywhere. We've also seen the devastation in Ukraine and the sanctions that come along with it, and that has resulted in difficulties for the people of Germany, just as it's resulted with difficulties of the people of Pakistan. In that context, we've also seen, following these significant events, this climate catastrophe on a scale that we've never imagined before. 33 million people is more than the people displaced by partition. I mean, it is an incredibly significant number. But obviously we'll have to now talk about the reconstruction and rehabilitation around the floods. I think that it is important to mention here, though, and to sort of quote Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General, that it's not a question of charity. It's a question of justice, that a country that produces 0.8% of the global carbon footprint is the 8th most climate-stressed country on the planet and is disproportionately affected by climate change. The 33 million people are playing with their lives and their livelihoods for the industrialization of richer countries. And therefore, if this is a global problem of sort of global actions, we hope that it also has global solutions, despite the incredible difficulties that everybody is facing at this time.
So, of course, one of the main things on the mind of people here in Germany as you visit, and also will be up at the United Nations next week, is Russia's invasion of Ukraine. There's going to be another vote at the UN General Assembly. The sides in that discussion are all kind of beating the drum for support on one side or the other. Is Pakistan going to abstain as it did in the last comparable vote?
We have had a principled position to abstain and not be drawn into a new conflict, particularly on the backs of Afghanistan. As you'll recall, with the fall of Kabul just a year ago, And that was for us one conflict after another. Decades after decades, we've confronted war and devastation in our own neighborhood. We were sort of hoping that such issues would not crop up, but the situation in the West has completely changed. The situation in Europe has completely changed following the conflict in Ukraine. As far as our position in the United Nations are concerned, I won't be able to sort of comment any further at this time until our own internal deliberations are complete.
But that sounds like, to me, an indication that you intend to hold that sort of neutral position and abstain again. Do you not feel? I mean, you said in your press conference that it's preposterous, I think is the word you used, that nuclear weapons are once again sort of in prospect in this conflict in Ukraine. Is this not the moment where you really do have to come off the fence and say to the Russian side, who are the ones who raised this spectre of nuclear weapons, that really would be a step too far? I
think I was pretty clear in my press conference on the issue of nuclear weapons and about how that should not be an option for anybody. As far as our position within the war of Ukraine is concerned, look, we've been consistent as far as UN resolutions are concerned, as far as international law is concerned, but as far as us actually proactively taking sides within this conflict, there's large bipartisan support within Pakistan for Pakistan to remain neutral. It's very difficult to convince the people of Pakistan that when there's an issue of international law, when there's an issue of UN resolutions in Kashmir, these very same countries take a neutral position and then expect the rest of us to fall in line when it matters to them. We also have challenges from the Afghanistan fallout, another NATO conflict that ended on our border without consulting us or significant engagement with the prior civilian government in Afghanistan that has now resulted in a Taliban interim government in Afghanistan with implications directly for us on our border. And once again, it's not something that sort of far away from us enough for us to wash our hands and turn our backs on. So it's very, very difficult within a domestic political context to expect our people to take a stance when there's not that consistency on other issues. However, having said that, despite our stance in the United Nations, Pakistan is an aid recipient country. There are only two countries that we make an exception for. One is Afghanistan, given the humanitarian difficulties they're facing there, and the second country that we've sent aid to is Ukraine. We have had we have long-standing ties with Ukraine, a lot of issues to do with food security because we used to import our wheat from Ukraine, and we still believe that dialogue and diplomacy is absolutely necessary for us to resolve this conflict.
Now, so you've set out why Pakistan is remaining neutral on the issue of
why we've so far
as far as it can. I want to turn to another controversial issue at the UN, Xinjiang and China. So there's been a vote at the UN Human Rights Council this week where Pakistan did not abstain. Pakistan voted no with China to prevent even debate taking place on the recent UN report on Xinjiang. How do you justify that?
It's absolutely a consistent policy of Pakistan at the Human Rights Council that while we take part in broader debates to do with human rights, when specific countries are mentioned, we have consistently voted no and will continue to vote no in the future. I'm trying to forget it. It's not actually in my mind right now, but in addition to this topic, there was another
there was also a vote on Afghanistan where Pakistan also voted no. But yeah. Germany's foreign ministry, I mean, you've just come from meeting Annalena Baerbock. Germany's foreign ministry described this vote in which China won that vote at the UN Human Rights Council as a dark day for human rights.
Sure, I understand where certain countries are coming from. As far as we're concerned, we believe that the politicization of the human rights institutions or bodies within the United Nations, when they specifically talk about different countries, is not necessarily the most productive use of those forums. But there are areas where there are disputes, where there are violations of human rights that are not part of any one country, but as part of internationally disputed territories. And those issues, whether it is the occupied Palestinian territories or whether it's the occupied territories of Kashmir, unfortunately are epicenters of the most historic violations of human rights in our time. And they unfortunately don't even get a mention in international media, don't get the lip service of international politicians, and don't get the time of day at the United Nations. Again, I reiterate, it may be easier for us to expect other countries to take a different line or a more an approach where they're more willing to listen if fundamental issues that are already declared as international disputes under the United Nations were given the due attention they deserve. When they're not, it's incredibly difficult to expect countries such as Pakistan, but Pakistan isn't alone, to change their way of conducting themselves in these institutions.
And so do you think it's hypocritical then of Germany to be pushing so hard on Xinjiang and for Annalena Baerbock to be quite cursory in her comments earlier in the press conference about the issue of Kashmir?
Look, I don't want to use those words, absolutely not. I just believe that when it comes to international institutions, the talk of international law, the talk of UN resolutions, then disputed territories, internationally recognized disputed territories. For us, the Indian-occupied Kashmir is an important point that it should require consistency. And if there was that consistency, I believe, then those countries would be more receptive to what more powerful countries or bigger countries are saying about issues that matter to them.
Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.